You know, before we had ray tracing and graphics that look like real life, PC gaming, well, it looked a whole lot different. We're talking a world of flat, chunky polygons and frame rates that felt more like a slideshow. But then in 1996, one single piece of hardware came along and just ignited a revolution. This is that story. Just look at this. The leap that happened in a single year is just staggering. In 1995, on the left there, 3D was slow, it was blocky, and let's be honest, it was pretty ugly. Then, boom, 1996 on the right, suddenly it's fast, it's smooth, and you've got these rich textures everywhere. This wasn't some gradual step up, it was an overnight transformation, and it was all thanks to one company and one incredible product.
And this was the company right at the heart of it all, 3DFX Interactive. It was founded by just a handful of brilliant engineers who had this vision, and they set out to solve what really seemed like an impossible problem for PC gaming at the time.
So, what exactly was that huge problem they were trying to fix? Well, before Voodoo came along, the idea of playing a true 3D game on your home PC was pretty much a fantasy.
See, the main issue was that your computer's brain, the CPU, was just completely overwhelmed. It had to do everything: calculate the game's physics, run the enemy AI, and try to draw every single 3D object on your screen. And the result? Graphics that looked less like a virtual world and more like colored building blocks just crawling across your monitor.
But 3DFX, they had an answer. And it came from this laser-like focus on one single thing: accelerating 3D. That focus led to the Voodoo breakthrough. And here it is, the Voodoo graphics card itself. Now, what made this thing so incredibly clever was that it didn't replace your existing video card. Nope, it was a 3D-only add-in card. You actually had to connect it to your normal 2D card with this little pass-through cable. It had one job and one job only: to make 3D games absolutely fly.
So what was the secret sauce here? Well, first off, it had its own dedicated hardware for stuff like texture mapping, which is basically just wrapping a 2D picture around a 3D object. It also used something called bilinear filtering to smooth those textures out, so they didn't look like a pixelated mess when you got up close. But the real killer app, the thing that changed everything, was Glide. It was a custom software language for the card that made it insanely easy for game developers to get incredible results. It just worked.
And the impact was just immediate. I mean, it was a true night and day difference. Games that were legendary but almost unplayable on most computers, like Quake and Tomb Raider, suddenly they were running beautifully. We're talking smooth frame rates, gorgeous graphics. Voodoo didn't just speed games up, it brought them to life. As you can probably guess, this kind of success catapulted 3DFX right to the top. Voodoo became the undisputed king of 3D.
Just get a load of this number. By 1998, 3DFX had, get this, an 85% share of the entire 3D accelerator market. That's not just market leadership, folks. That is total, utter dominance.
And with follow-up cards like the legendary Voodoo 2, the brand became part of the culture. The name Voodoo basically meant high-performance gaming. The equation was simple. If you were a serious PC gamer in the late 90s, you didn't just want a Voodoo card, you had to have one, period.
But you know how these stories go. No king can reign forever. While 3DFX was sitting pretty on top with cards like the Voodoo 2, a challenger was quietly emerging. A company you might have heard of called NVIDIA, and they were about to release the GeForce 256, which they called the world's first GPU. The race was officially on.
The whole landscape was shifting under their feet. Not only were competitors like NVIDIA catching up, but universal software standards, namely Microsoft's DirectX, were getting a whole lot better. Suddenly, game developers didn't need to use 3DFX's special Glide language anymore. And Glide, which was once Voodoo's greatest strength, was slowly turning into its biggest weakness.
And this brings us to the tragic part of the story, because right at the absolute height of its power, 3DFX made a series of critical mistakes that would lead to its downfall.
When you look at this timeline, we can see just how fast everything unraveled. It all started in 1998 when they decided, hey, let's make our own cards, and bought a manufacturer. But that move angered all their partners, so by 1999, those partners, companies like Diamond and Creative, had all jumped ship to NVIDIA. Then in 2000, their next-gen card, the Voodoo 5, showed up late to the party. It all happened so fast, and by December of 2000, it was all over.
This quote really just gets to the heart of the business failure. By deciding they were going to do it all themselves, 3DFX completely destroyed its ecosystem.
They cut out the very partners who built and sold their cards for them. In a single move, they cut off their own revenue stream and handed their competitor a ready-made army of allies.
And so, in what has to be one of the greatest ironies in tech history, the company that basically pioneered the entire consumer 3D graphics industry was gone. Its patents, its engineers, its legacy, all of it was just absorbed by its biggest rival, NVIDIA.
But here's the thing. Even though the company itself is long gone, its impact, its legacy, is absolutely all around us today.
Take this, for example, SLI. That idea of linking multiple graphics cards together to get more power, that wasn't an NVIDIA invention. 3DFX pioneered that tech all the way back in 1998 with the Voodoo 2. That core concept is still alive and kicking today.
Really, Voodoo's DNA is baked into every single modern gaming PC. They were the ones who proved that there was a huge market for these things. They popularized the very idea of having dedicated hardware just for 3D, and their fierce, even if short-lived, dominance forced everyone else to innovate way faster, which created the hyper-competitive industry that we all benefit from today.
And this quote just sums it all up perfectly. 3DFX lit the fire. They kicked off the entire 3D gaming revolution, but in a tragic twist, they couldn't survive the very race that they themselves started.
Which really leaves us with a fascinating what-if to chew on. What if 3DFX hadn't decided to go it alone? What if they had embraced DirectX instead of sticking with Glide for so long? It really makes you wonder, how different would the world of gaming look today?